Lisa Martinez pressed her face against the small window of the transport ship and watched the massive space station grow larger. The Celestial Academy of Interspecies Learning looked like a giant metal flower floating in the darkness of space. Its petals were actually different sections where students from across the galaxy lived and studied together. Her stomach felt tight with worry. In just a few minutes, she would be the first human to ever attend this famous school. Earth had fought for years to get this chance. Now it all rested on her shoulders. The other passengers on the transport ship were all aliens. A tall blue creature with 4 arms sat across from her, reading from a glowing tablet. Behind her, something that looked like a walking tree was making soft musical sounds. None of them paid any attention to the nervous human girl. Lisa looked down at her simple Earth clothes and felt even more out of place. Everyone else wore fancy uniforms or flowing robes that seemed to change colors. Her plain gray jumpsuit looked cheap and ugly next to their beautiful outfits. The ship docked with a soft bump. Lisa grabbed her single bag and followed the other students through the airlock. The moment she stepped into the station, she knew she was in trouble. The main hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched so high she could barely see the top. Students from dozens of different species walked around, talking in languages she had never heard. Some floated through the air without touching the ground. Others had so many legs she lost count trying to watch them walk. A voice spoke from somewhere above her head. "Lisa Martinez, please report to Orientation Hall 7. She looked around confused. How was she supposed to find Hall 7 in this maze? Back on Earth, someone would have given her directions or a map. Here, everyone seemed to expect her to just know where to go. A student walking past her stopped and turned around. He was tall and thin with pointed ears and silver hair. His skin was so pale it almost glowed. When he smiled at her, his teeth were perfectly white and straight. "You must be the human," he said in a voice that sounded like music. "I am Prince Velthari of Alteran. I have heard much about your species." Lisa felt her cheeks get hot. "Nice to meet you. I'm Lisa. Do you know where Hall 7 is?" Velthari's smile got wider but somehow less friendly. "Of course, follow me. I was curious to see what Earth would send us. You are smaller than I expected." As they walked through long corridors lined with windows showing the stars outside, Velthari kept talking. "The Academy is very different from your Earth schools, I imagine. Here we study the proper ways of war and peace. Civilized methods that have kept the galaxy stable for thousands of years." Lisa nodded and tried to keep up with his long steps. "That sounds great. I'm really excited to learn." "Yes, well, I suppose humans need all the help they can get." Velthari glanced down at her with something that might have been pity. "Your species is so young, so violent. The stories we hear about Earth are quite shocking." They stopped in front of a large door marked with symbols Lisa could not read. "This is Orientation Hall 7, Velthari said. "A word of advice, human. The instructors here expect students to think before they act. Try not to embarrass your planet too badly." He walked away before Lisa could answer. She stood alone in front of the door, feeling smaller than ever. Inside the hall, about 30 students sat in chairs arranged in a circle. Lisa found an empty seat and sat down quietly. Most of the other students were talking to each other in small groups. No one looked at her or tried to include her in their conversations. A door at the front of the room opened, and the largest creature Lisa had ever seen walked in. It stood at least 8 feet tall and was covered in green scales. Its yellow eyes looked at each student as it moved to the center of the circle. "I am Commander Zethkar," it said in a voice like rocks grinding together. "I will be your instructor for advanced tactical theory. You are here because your species believes you have the intelligence to become military leaders." The commander's eyes stopped on Lisa. "Some of you come from worlds with long traditions of honorable warfare. Others come from places that have known peace for centuries. Its gaze seemed to drill into her. And some come from worlds where conflict is common and brutal. Lisa felt every other student in the room turn to look at her. Her face burned with shame and anger. Commander Zethkar continued. In this class you will learn that there is a right way and a wrong way to conduct military operations. The civilized species of this galaxy have developed methods that minimize suffering while achieving victory. These methods have worked for millennia. A student near Lisa raised her hand. She looked like a giant ant walking on two legs. Commander, what about species that do not follow these civilized methods? An excellent question, Dr. Nisara. Such species usually destroy themselves before they can threaten others. The few that survive long enough to reach space travel eventually learn proper conduct or find themselves isolated from galactic society. Lisa wanted to raise her own hand and ask questions, but she was afraid of what the commander might say. Instead, she sat quietly and listened as the other students discussed the proper ways to fight wars. According to them, good military leaders always gave their enemies a chance to surrender. They never attacked civilian targets. They followed strict rules about what weapons could be used and when. Fighting was supposed to be clean and honorable, like some kind of deadly sport. Lisa thought about the history book she had. Right on Earth, human wars were nothing like what these students described. Humans fought to win, no matter what it took. They used tricks and lies. They attacked weak points. They did whatever was necessary to protect their people and defeat their enemies. As the class ended, Lisa realized that everything humans had learned about fighting was considered wrong here. Her people were seen as brutal savages who did not understand civilized warfare. She walked back to her small room in the human student section, feeling more alone than ever. Tomorrow she would start her real classes. She would have to sit quietly while aliens talked about the proper way to fight wars, knowing that her own species would be used as an example of how not to behave. Lisa looked out her window at the stars and wondered if coming here had been a mistake. But she was here now, and she had a job to do. Earth was counting on her to learn everything she could and prove that humans belonged in galactic society, even if it meant pretending to be something she was not. 3 months had passed since Lisa arrived at the academy. She had learned to find her way through the maze of corridors without getting lost. She knew which dining halls served food that humans could eat safely. She even understood some of the alien languages she heard in the hallways every day, but she still felt like an outsider. Every morning, Lisa attended advanced tactical theory with Commander Zethkar. The other students had stopped staring at her like she was some strange animal, but they still treated her like she did not belong. When they worked in groups, she was always the last one chosen. When they discussed strategy, they listened to her ideas with polite smiles and then ignored everything she said. Today felt different, though. Commander Zethkar stood at the front of the classroom with a serious expression on his scaled face. Behind him, a large screen showed a 3-dimensional image of a space station. Today we will conduct a practical exercise, the commander announced. This is Civilian Station Delta 7. It has been taken over by hostile forces who are holding 200 innocent people as prisoners. Your mission is to plan a rescue operation that saves as many lives as possible. Lisa leaned forward in her seat. Finally, something that felt real instead of just theory and rules. Prince Velthari raised his hand immediately. Commander, what are the rules of engagement? Are we bound by the Galactic Convention on Civilian Protection? Of course, Commander. Zethkar replied. All civilized military operations must follow proper protocols. The giant ant-like student, Dr. Nisara, clicked her mandibles together thoughtfully. What weapons are the hostiles carrying? This will determine what level of force we are permitted to use in response. Lisa watched as her classmates began discussing the problem like it was a chess game. They talked about sending messages to the terrorists offering them safe passage in exchange for releasing some of the hostages. They debated whether stunning weapons would be more appropriate than lethal force. The discussion went on for 20 minutes without anyone suggesting an actual plan to save the people trapped on the station. Finally, Lisa could not stay quiet anymore. She raised her hand. Commander Zethkar looked surprised. The human girl rarely spoke in class. Yes, Miss Martinez? Why don't we just cut the power to the whole station? Lisa asked. Emergency lighting would still work, but the main lights would go out. Then we could send in teams wearing night vision equipment. The terrorists would be blind, but our people could see perfectly. The classroom went completely silent. Prince Valthari stared at her with his mouth open. Even Commander Zethkar looked shocked. That would be quite disruptive to the civilian population, Dr. Nisara said slowly. They would be frightened by the darkness. But they would be alive, Lisa pointed out. Scared is better than dead. Another student, a massive creature covered in thick fur, shook his head. That is not how civilized warfare works, human. We do not use fear as a weapon against innocent people. His name was Thok, and he came from a warrior species called the Brutalians. Despite their name, they followed strict codes of honor in battle. Lisa had tried to talk to him several times, but he always looked at her like she smelled bad. I'm not trying to scare the civilians, Lisa explained. I'm trying to save them. If we follow all the rules and protocols, how many of them will die? While we're being polite to the terrorists. Prince Valthari stood up from his chair. His pale face was flushed with anger. This is exactly what I expected from a human. You think violence is the answer to everything. You have no concept of honor or proper conduct. Lisa felt her own anger rising. Honor doesn't help dead hostages. Perhaps, Prince Valthari said in his musical voice, this is why humans are not ready to join galactic society. You are still too primitive to understand civilized solutions to problems. The other students murmured agreement. Lisa looked around the room and saw the same expression on every alien face. They were not angry with her. They were disappointed, like adults watching a child throw a tantrum. What would you do differently? Commander Zethkar asked Lisa. His voice was neutral, but she could hear the challenge in it. Lisa stood up and walked to the screen showing the space station. She pointed to different sections as she spoke. First, we gather intelligence. We find out exactly where the hostiles are and what weapons they have. We don't ask them politely. We use sensors and spy cameras. Then we identify their leader and track his movements. She traced a path through the station with her finger. We divide our forces into multiple teams. One team creates a distraction here at the main docking bay. While the terrorists are focused on that, two other teams enter through the maintenance shafts here and here. The alien students exchanged glances. This was not how they had been taught to think about military operations. The distraction team makes a lot of noise and draws attention, Lisa continued. Meanwhile, the real assault teams move through the station quietly. They take out terrorist guards one by one, without raising alarms. When they reach the hostages, they move fast and hard. No warnings, no chances to surrender. Just eliminate the threats and get the civilians to safety. Dr. Nisara Asanteni twitched nervously. But what if some of the hostiles wish to surrender? The Galactic Convention requires us to accept surrender when it is offered. They gave up their right to surrender when they started threatening innocent people, Lisa said flatly. The classroom erupted in shocked voices. Several students began talking at once, all of them expressing horror at Lisa's attitude. Barbaric, Prince Valthari declared. Absolutely barbaric. This is exactly why humans should not be allowed in positions of military authority. Thok nodded his massive head. Among my people, warriors who refuse to accept honorable surrender are exiled in shame. Combat without honor is not combat at all. Lisa looked at each of her classmates in turn. They were all staring at her like she had suggested eating babies. "For breakfast, you want to know what I think is barbaric?" she asked quietly. "Letting innocent people die because you're more worried about being polite to terrorists than saving lives." Commander Zethkar held up one clawed hand for silence. "Miss Martinez, your approach shows creativity. However, it also shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern warfare is conducted. We are not savages. We have evolved beyond the brutal methods that your species still employs." He turned to address the entire class. "This is an excellent example of why military theory is so important. Without proper education and training, even intelligent individuals can resort to primitive tactics that violate every principle of civilized conduct." Lisa felt her face burn with shame and anger. She had tried to save imaginary hostages in the most effective way she could think of, and everyone acted like she was some kind of monster. She sat back down and stayed quiet for the rest of the class, while her classmates developed their proper rescue plan, which involved 3 days of negotiations and would probably result in half the hostages being killed. Lisa stared out the window at the stars and wondered if she would ever understand these people. When class ended, she walked alone through the corridors back to her room. Behind her, she could hear the other students talking in excited voices about the shocking display of human brutality they had just witnessed. Lisa closed her door and sat on her narrow bed. She had come here to learn from the galaxy's best military minds. Instead, she was learning that everything her species knew about fighting and surviving was considered wrong. But deep in her heart, she could not shake the feeling that when real danger came, not classroom exercises but actual life and death situations, all their theories and protocols would not be enough. She just hoped she would never have to prove it. Lisa sat in her usual seat in the back corner of Commander Zethkar's classroom. It had been 2 weeks since the hostage rescue exercise, and her classmates still looked at her like she was dangerous. Prince Velthari had not spoken to her since that day. Even Thok, who at least used to nod when she passed him in the hallway, now turned away when he saw her coming. She had stopped trying to participate in class discussions. Every time she offered an idea, the other students would exchange those looks again. The looks that said she was primitive and violent and did not belong here. Commander Zethkar was setting up another simulation on the big screen. This one showed a merchant ship being chased by pirates through an asteroid field. "Today we will discuss the proper response to piracy," the commander announced. "Remember, even criminals have rights under galactic law. Our goal is to stop illegal activity while minimizing harm to all involved parties." Lisa stared out the window at the stars and tried not to listen. She knew how this would go. Her classmates would suggest sending warning messages to the pirates. They would debate the correct way to disable the pirate ship without hurting anyone. They would spend an hour discussing whether stunning weapons or capture nets would be more appropriate. A soft alarm began ringing somewhere in the distance. Lisa looked up, confused. She had never heard that sound before. Commander Zethkar paused his lecture and tilted his scaled head to listen. The alarm got louder. Then another alarm joined it, this one higher and more urgent. "Attention all students and faculty," a voice announced over the station's communication system. "This is not a drill. Report to your assigned emergency stations immediately. Security teams to level 7. Medical teams to level 3. This is not a drill." The classroom erupted in confused voices. Lisa's classmates looked around at each other with wide eyes. None of them had ever heard a real emergency announcement before. Commander Zethkar moved toward the door. "Remain calm, students. Follow emergency procedures. Move to the designated safe areas and wait for further instructions." Before he could reach the door, the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a second later, bathing everything in dim red light. The soft humming sound that always filled the station stopped. Even the air circulation system went quiet. "What is happening?" Dr. Nisara asked in a voice that was higher than usual. "Power failure," Commander Zethkar said, but Lisa could hear uncertainty in his gravelly voice. "The backup systems will restore normal operations shortly." Lisa stood up from her chair. Something felt wrong. She had grown up on space stations and ships. Power failures were serious, but they did not usually happen with no warning. And the emergency announcements had mentioned security teams. Why would they need security for a simple power problem? The door to the classroom suddenly exploded inward. Lisa threw herself behind her desk as pieces of metal flew through the air. Her classmates screamed and dove for cover. Through the smoke and debris, dark figures rushed into the room. They wore black armor and carried weapons Lisa had never seen before, energy weapons that glowed with evil purple light. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but she could see aliens of different species. A reptilian creature like Commander Zethkar, but smaller and covered in scars. A furry beast that might have been related to Thok's people. Something that looked like Dr. Nisara, but with broken antennae and missing limbs. "Nobody move," the lead figure shouted. "We are the Void Reapers. This station is now under our control." Lisa's blood went cold. She had heard of the Void Reapers. They were criminals and outcasts from dozens of different species. Pirates and terrorists who had been thrown out of civilized society. They raided ships and stations across the galaxy, taking what they wanted and killing anyone who got in their way. Commander Zethkar stepped forward with his hands raised. "I am Commander Zethkar of the Galactic Defense Academy. Under the terms of the Prisoner of War Convention, I demand that you treat these students according to." The lead Reaper shot him. The purple energy bolt hit the commander in the chest, and he collapsed to the floor. His scales were burned black around the wound. Lisa could smell cooking flesh. Prince Velthari made a choking sound. "You cannot do that." He was surrendering. "The Galactic Convention clearly states, your conventions mean nothing to us, pretty boy," the Reaper leader said. He was the scarred reptilian. When he spoke, Lisa could see that half his teeth were missing. "We were thrown out of your precious civilized society. We do not play by your rules anymore." Lisa pressed herself flatter against the floor behind her overturned desk. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might explode. But part of her mind was still working, still analyzing the situation like her military history teachers on Earth had taught her. The Void Reapers had disabled the station's power first. That meant they had inside knowledge of the Academy's systems. They knew exactly where to hit to cause maximum confusion. This was not a random attack. It was planned. "Listen carefully, children," the Reaper leader continued. "Your parents are very important people. Princes and commanders and council members from across the galaxy. They will pay very well to get their precious babies back safely." Dr. Nisara's voice was barely a whisper. "You want ransom money, Smartbug. Yes, we want money. Lots of money. But we also want to send a message." The Reaper's scarred face twisted into a horrible smile. "The galaxy will learn that your fancy rules and laws cannot protect you from people who have nothing left to lose." Thok slowly stood up from behind a chair. His massive frame towered over the Reapers, and Lisa could see the warrior instincts in his eyes. "I challenge you to honorable combat. Single battle, according to the ancient codes of the Reaper." Leader shot him too. Thok's body hit the floor with a crash that shook the whole room. Prince Velthari screamed and tried to crawl toward his fallen classmate. One of the other Reapers kicked him in the ribs and sent him rolling across the floor. "No honor here, Furball," the leader said to Thok's still form. "No codes, no rules. Just power and fear." Lisa bit her lip to keep from making any sound. Everything her classmates had learned about civilized warfare was useless here. The Void Reapers did not care about conventions or proper conduct. They shot people who tried to surrender. They killed without warning. They were fighting like humans. The thought hit her like a punch to the stomach. These criminals were using exactly the kind of tactics that her classmates had called barbaric. No rules, no honor, just whatever it took to win. Round up the survivors, the Reaper leader ordered his followers. Take them to the main auditorium with the others. Make sure they understand that any resistance will be met with immediate execution. As the Reapers began herding the terrified students out of the classroom, Lisa stayed hidden behind her desk. In the confusion and dim lighting, they had not noticed her yet. She watched her classmates stumble over each other in their panic. Prince Velthari was crying. Dr. Nisara kept repeating legal codes under her breath, like they were magic spells that could protect her. None of them knew what to do when their civilized world suddenly became uncivilized, but Lisa did. She had been raised on stories of human wars and human survival. She knew what to do when the rules stopped working and only strength and cunning mattered. Her classmates had always told her that human tactics were too brutal for modern warfare. Now she was going to find out if they were right. After the last Reaper left the classroom, Lisa crawled out from behind her desk. She looked at Commander Zethkar's body and felt sick, but she forced herself to search through his pockets. She found his security access card and a small emergency communicator. The communicator was dead. The Reapers had jammed all communications, but the access card might still work on some doors. Lisa stepped over the debris and peered carefully into the hallway. She could hear shouting and screaming from other parts of the station. Emergency lights flickered on and off. The Void Reapers were moving through the academy like a plague, taking control of everything. But they had made one mistake. They had assumed that all the students would react like civilized, rule-following aliens. They had not planned for a human. Lisa Martinez had spent 3 months being told she was too primitive for galactic society. Now she was going to show them exactly what a primitive human could do when survival was on the line. She slipped into the hallway and disappeared into the shadows, moving like her ancestors had moved when they hunted in the dark forests of ancient Earth. Lisa moved through the dark corridors like a ghost. The emergency lights cast strange shadows on the walls, but she had learned to use the shadows to hide. Every few minutes, she heard the heavy footsteps of Void Reapers patrolling the hallways. Each time, she pressed herself into a doorway or maintenance alcove until they passed. She had been moving for an hour now, using Commander Zethkar's access card to open doors and explore different sections of the station. What she found made her stomach sick with worry. The Reapers had taken control of everything important. The main power center, the communication hub, the docking bays where rescue ships might arrive. They had herded most of the students and teachers into the large auditorium in the center of the station. Lisa could hear crying and frightened voices coming from that direction, but the Reapers had made mistakes too. They were criminals, not soldiers. They had numbers and weapons, but they did not understand how to really control a space station. They left blind spots in their patrols. They did not guard the maintenance tunnels properly. They thought fear alone would keep everyone under control. Lisa found her first group of survivors in a storage room on level 5. 6 students were hiding behind boxes of supplies, too scared to move. When she opened the door, they almost screamed before they recognized her. Lisa! It was a small blue alien named Kira from her physics class. Thank the stars you are alive. We thought the Reapers had captured everyone. Not everyone, Lisa whispered as she slipped into the room and closed the door behind her. But we need to move. This room is not safe. A tall plant-like student named Root shook his leafy head. We should stay hidden until help arrives. The Academy will send security forces to rescue us. Lisa looked at him sadly. The Academy does not know what is happening here. The Reapers jammed all communications. No one is coming to help us. The students stared at her with wide, frightened eyes. These were some of the smartest young people in the galaxy. but none of them knew what to do in a real crisis. "Then we should surrender," said another student, a crystal creature whose body glowed faintly in the dark. "If we cooperate, perhaps they will not hurt us." "They already hurt people," Lisa said quietly. "They killed Commander Zethkar. They killed Thok. They are not interested in following rules or being reasonable." Kira started crying. "What are we going to do?" "We are just students. We do not know how to fight." Lisa knelt down next to the terrified girl. "You do not have to fight, but you do have to survive, and I am going to help you." She spent the next 10 minutes explaining her plan. It was simple, but it required the students to do things they had never imagined. Moving silently through dark passages, using deception and misdirection, setting traps. "This is not how civilized people behave," Root protested. "These are the tactics of savages." "The Reapers are not civilized people," Lisa replied. "If we try to fight them with honor and rules, we will die with honor and rules. Is that what you want?" None of them answered. Lisa led the group through maintenance tunnels to a safer location on level 3. Along the way, they found more survivors. Dr. Nisara was hiding in a laboratory with 2 other students. A group of 5 younger students were trapped in a locked classroom. Each time, Lisa had to convince them to abandon their safe hiding spots and trust her. By the end of the second hour, she had gathered 18 survivors. They looked at her with a mixture of fear and hope. She was just a human exchange student, barely older than most of them. But she was the only one who seemed to know what to do. "Listen carefully," Lisa told the group as they huddled in an unused storage bay. "The Reapers have most of the hostages in the main auditorium. They are planning to make demands to our home governments. But first, they want to make an example." Dr. Nisara clicked her mandibles nervously. "What kind of example?" "They are going to execute some prisoners and broadcast it across the galaxy to show that they are serious." Lisa's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "We cannot let that happen." A student from the water-breathing species raised a webbed hand. "But what can we do? There are only 18 of us and dozens of them. They have weapons, we have nothing." Lisa looked around the storage bay. It was filled with cleaning supplies, maintenance equipment, and spare parts for the station systems. To her classmates, it looked like junk. To Lisa, it looked like an arsenal. "We have more than you think," she said. "We have knowledge of this station that they do not have. We have the ability to move without being seen. And we have the one thing they do not expect." "What is that?" Kira asked. "The willingness to fight dirty." Lisa began dividing her group into teams. Some would create distractions to draw Reaper guards away from important areas. Others would disable station systems to cause confusion. The smallest and quietest would gather intelligence about Reaper positions and plans. Each team had a simple mission, but together they would create chaos that the Reapers could not predict or control. Dr. Nisara looked uncomfortable with the whole plan. "Lisa, what you are suggesting, it is not the way we do things. We should try to negotiate. Perhaps we can reason with them." "You want to reason with people who shoot prisoners for fun?" Lisa asked. "Go ahead, walk up to one of them and start talking about galactic law. See how that works out." The insect-like alien's antennae drooped. She knew Lisa was right, but everything in her civilized mind rebelled against these brutal tactics. "I know this is hard," Lisa said more gently. "I know you were all taught that. There are right ways and wrong ways to handle conflicts, but sometimes the right way gets people killed." She looked at each of her classmates in turn. "The Reapers are using fear as their weapon. They want us to be so scared that we do not resist. They want us to follow their rules instead of making our own." Lisa stood up and began checking the equipment they had gathered, cleaning chemicals that could be mixed into smoke bombs, metal pipes that could be used to jam doors, electronic parts that could be rigged to cause power failures in specific Areas. My species learned a long time ago that when someone tries to kill you, you do not worry about being polite, she continued. You worry about staying alive. Use every advantage you can find. You hit them where they are weak, not where they are strong. Root's leaves rustled with distress. But what if we become like them? What if fighting this way changes us into something horrible? Lisa paused in her work and looked at the plant-like student. What is more horrible? Becoming a little bit savage to save innocent lives, or staying pure while people die around you? None of her classmates could answer that question. I am not asking you to become killers, Lisa said quietly. I am asking you to become survivors. There is a difference. She handed out assignments to each team. Some of the students looked sick with fear, but they took their jobs anyway. They trusted her because she was the only one who seemed to have answers. As the teams prepared to move out, Dr. Nisara approached Lisa privately. I have been thinking about what you said in class. Months ago, the insect-like alien said. About humans being willing to do whatever it takes to win. I thought it was primitive thinking. Lisa adjusted the crude smoke bomb she had built from cleaning supplies. What do you think now? I think, Dr. Nisara said slowly, that maybe primitive thinking has its place. Lisa smiled grimly. My grandmother used to say that civilization is a luxury. When people are trying to kill you, you cannot afford luxuries. She looked out through the storage bay's small window at the dark corridors beyond. Somewhere in this station, the Void Reapers were preparing to murder her classmates on live video to terrorize the galaxy. They thought they were dealing with soft, civilized children who would break under pressure. They were about to learn what happened when you cornered a human. Lisa crouched in the ventilation shaft above the main auditorium and watched through the metal grating. Below her, over 200 students and teachers sat on the floor with their hands tied behind their backs. Void Reapers with purple energy. Weapons walked among them, kicking anyone who moved or spoke. At the front of the auditorium, the scarred reptilian leader stood next to a large screen. Camera equipment had been set up to broadcast across the galaxy. In 1 hour, he planned to execute 10 prisoners live on video to show the galaxy that the Void Reapers were serious about their demands. Prince Velthari sat in the front row with dried tears on his pale cheeks. His perfect hair was dirty and his elegant clothes were torn. Next to him, other students from Lisa's class looked broken and hopeless. They had spent their whole lives believing that civilization would protect them. Now they knew better. Lisa spoke quietly into her makeshift communicator. Team's report status. Kira's voice crackled through the device. Team 1 ready. Smoke bombs placed in the east corridor. Dr. Nisara answered next. Team 2 ready. Power junction identified. We can cut lighting to the auditorium on your signal. Root's nervous voice followed. Team 3 ready, but I still do not like this plan. Someone is going to get hurt. People are already hurt, Lisa whispered back. People are already dead. We cannot save everyone, but we can save some. She checked her watch. 30 minutes until the execution broadcast. Her teams were in position, but the next part was the most dangerous. She had to get into the auditorium herself. Lisa crawled through the ventilation system until she reached an access panel directly above the stage. She could hear the Reaper leader practicing his speech for the camera. Citizens of the galaxy, he was saying, your precious academies and your civilized laws cannot protect you from the Void Reapers. Today you will watch as we execute the children of your leaders. Tomorrow we will demand payment for the rest. Lisa carefully removed the access panel and looked down. The drop to the stage was about 15 feet. There were 3 Reapers standing near the camera equipment. She would have to take them out quickly and quietly. She had never killed anyone before. The thought made her stomach twist with fear and sickness. But she remembered Commander Zethkar's burned body and Thok's lifeless eyes. The Reapers had made their choice. Now she had to make hers. Lisa dropped through the ceiling opening like a shadow. She landed behind the first Reaper and wrapped her arm around his throat. He struggled for a few seconds before going limp. The second Reaper turned to sumo noise, but Lisa was already moving. She grabbed a metal rod from the camera equipment and swung it like a club. The Reaper collapsed with a dented helmet. The third Reaper raised his weapon, but Lisa threw herself forward and knocked him off balance. They rolled across the stage, fighting for control of his gun. Lisa bit his hand until he screamed and let go. Then she hit him in the head with his own weapon until he stopped moving. The whole fight took less than 30 seconds. None of the prisoners had seen her yet, and the other Reapers were too far away to notice the commotion. Lisa grabbed the fallen weapons and spoke into her communicator. "All teams, execute now." Smoke began pouring from the corridors around the auditorium. The lights went out, plunging everything into darkness except for the dim emergency lighting. Explosions echoed from different parts of the station as Lisa's team set off their improvised devices. The Void Reapers in the auditorium began shouting orders to each other. They could not see through the smoke, and the sounds of explosions made them think they were under attack by a large force. "What is happening?" The scarred leader yelled into his communicator. "Report, all units report." Lisa's voice answered him through the station's communication system. She had rigged one of the maintenance panels to broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Lisa Martinez of Earth," her voice echoed through the auditorium. "You wanted to send a message to the galaxy? Here is mine. Humans do not surrender. Humans do not negotiate with terrorists. Humans fight back." The Reaper leader spun around, trying to locate the source of her voice. "Find her. Kill that human brat." But Lisa was already moving through the smoke and darkness. She had studied the auditorium's layout for months during boring lectures. She knew every seat, every door, every hiding spot. The Reapers stumbled around blindly, shooting their purple energy weapons at shadows. But they were hitting each other more often than they were hitting anything useful. Lisa reached the prisoners and began cutting their restraints with a knife she had taken from one of the fallen Reapers. Prince Valthari stared at her with amazement. "Lisa? How did you... Where did you learn to fight like that?" "Humans learn to fight before we learn to walk," she whispered as she freed his hands. "Help me get the others loose." Working together, they freed 24 prisoners before the Reapers began to organize themselves. The smoke was starting to clear, and the emergency lights gave enough illumination for the criminals to see what was happening. "There!" one of them shouted. "The human girl is freeing the prisoners." Energy bolts began flying through the air. Lisa pushed Prince Valthari behind a row of seats and returned fire with the weapons she had captured. She was not trying to win a straight fight. She was buying time for her teams to complete their mission. More explosions shook the station. The main power grid failed completely, and backup lighting flickered on and off. Through the chaos, Lisa's teams were systematically destroying the Reapers. Control over the Academy. Dr. Nizara's voice crackled through the communicator. "Lisa, we have disabled their jamming equipment. Communications are restored." That was exactly what Lisa had been waiting for. She grabbed the Reaper leader's broadcasting equipment and sent out an emergency signal to the nearest military base. "This is Celestial Academy. We are under attack by Void Reapers. Request immediate assistance. Students and faculty are in danger." The scarred Reaper leader realized what she had done and let out a roar of rage. "You little savage! You have ruined everything." He charged toward her with his weapon blazing. Lisa rolled behind the stage and came up shooting. Her first shot missed, but her second one hit him in the shoulder. He spun around and crashed into the camera equipment. "Surrender now," Lisa called out to the remaining Reapers. "Military ships are on their way. You can still live through this if you give up." "Never!" the leader snarled. We would rather die than go back to your prison cells." The fighting continued for another 20 minutes. Lisa's teams created confusion throughout the station while she held the auditorium with the help of freed prisoners. Some of her classmates surprised her with their courage. Prince Velthari picked up a fallen weapon and fought beside her. Dr. Nisara used her knowledge of station systems to trap groups of Reapers in sealed sections. When the rescue ships finally arrived, they found most of the Void Reapers either dead or surrendering. The few who tried to fight the professional soldiers were quickly overwhelmed. Lisa sat on the auditorium floor with her back against the wall, exhausted and shaking. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Her hands were covered in blood. She looked nothing like the quiet exchange student who had arrived at the academy 6 months ago. Prince Velthari sat down next to her. His elegant face was serious and thoughtful. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "We all do. I called your tactics barbaric. I said humans were too primitive for civilized society." Lisa looked at him with tired eyes. "Maybe you were right. Maybe what I did today was barbaric." "No," Prince Velthari shook his head. "What you did today was necessary. You saved lives when all our civilized theories failed us. You showed us that sometimes survival is more important than honor." Around them, rescue teams were helping the freed prisoners and medical teams were treating the wounded. Lisa watched her classmates being taken to safety and felt a mixture of relief and sadness. She had proven that humans belonged in galactic society. But she had done it by showing them exactly how uncivilized humans could be when they needed to survive. A week later, Lisa stood in front of the Academy's governing council. Representatives from dozens of species had come to hear her report about the Void Reaper attack. "Miss Martinez," the council leader said, "your actions during the crisis were unconventional, but they were also effective. The Academy would like to offer you a position as instructor in applied combat theory." Lisa thought about it for a long moment. "What would I teach?" "How to fight when the rules do not work," the council leader replied. "How to survive when civilization fails. How to lead when others are paralyzed by fear." Lisa looked out through the window at the stars. Earth was somewhere out there, waiting for her to return home. But maybe her real home was here now, teaching the galaxy's future leaders that sometimes you had to get your hands dirty to keep the light burning. "I accept," she said. "But I have one condition. The first lesson I teach will be this: there is no such thing as civilized warfare. There is only war and the people who survive it." The council members looked uncomfortable, but they nodded agreement. Lisa Martinez had come to the Academy as just a human exchange student. She was leaving as something much more important, a teacher who could show the galaxy how to fight for what mattered most. And if that made her a savage in their eyes, she could live with that.